Welcome back, everyone. This is the BAE Harrier GR9 from Airfix 172nd. I've done the GR7A, which is Royal Air Force, Cottesmore, Rutland, England, 15th December 2010. Okay, I know this looks bad. We got a problem for the flight surgeon here. I had an idea, and it actually come out well, but I did have to start hacking into my little Airfix pilot. In truth, the Airfix pilots are not the best, but if you hang around, you'll see how it works out. The general idea was that I wanted to do the plane in flight because this plane was the last rolling landing of the Harriers in the UK, and his arm didn't quite line up. So this was part of my idea. Essentially, to chop his arm off and bring it round to the position where it at least gives the semblance of he's using the flight controls. So filing. I think I used Mr. Surfacer super glue, Mr. Surfacer, filing, sandpaper, carving. There was a bit of work in it. And with his left, I basically used I cut under the forearm, bit of glue on the elbow to soften it up and then bend it out. So it at least gives a semblance of he's using the flight controls. Or she. It's 2024, isn't it? So standard RAF colours. Again, the FX figures are not the best, but they're pretty nice for what you get. In general, I've done quite a few Harriers now. The FX one, I wouldn't say it's my favourite, but it's half the price of the Kinetic. And interestingly, it's one of the, it's better than the Tamiya one. The Tamiya one, the old one, is shocking. People say Tamiya is boring. If you want some fun, pick some of their old wacky kits because they're a nightmare. There's the main turbine, that's just steel. It's one of those ones, makes me laugh. When I was younger, I used to do those all bright and shiny, but when you have a look, it's not quite like that. The inside is grey with white. This is the inside of the intake. So I'm just coming in doing the white on these. If I can get away with it, I'll use the sprues actually while they're in place. And I'm so tight and mean that if there's paint in the airbrush, sometimes I'll just use that as well on odds and ends that I see. That's the side parts of the pilot seat. So you can see how it's coming together, and that gives the idea of at least what I was trying to give the impression that he or she is actually flying. And you'll see as we move along, well, especially at the end, I'll go through how I created my little budget stand to give the impression of flight. There's that big turbine going in, standard stuff here, gluing the fuselage together. I've mentioned it before, I'm wary on things like that of using thin cement. It can really get away on you if you're not careful. I do use tape and rubber bands and, elastic bands, whatever you call them, wherever you are, to keep it all together. I've not really mentioned my setup, but this is my sort of homemade spray booth work area. It's got a fair bit of suction, so sometimes I'll just put a piece of paper towel on in the background. I can use it for test painting, and it provides a bit of filtering, and it helps keep my external filter clean. This is just standard Harrier construction. They all tend to follow the same pattern with that, I don't know what you call it. It's like a joined tail section ailerons. More filing. Important to get these squared away because otherwise you're going to get poor fit on the wings. Again, no huge surprises here. The kit does go together well, but FX always has this bad habit of being 90% good, and then they do a couple things that you think, man, are you crazy or what? Did no one think this through? There's parts where the fit is, it's all perfect, and then you'll get ejector pin marks in really obvious place. So again, this is just typical Harrier construction. You can see how I've already taped up the inside of the intakes. So that means later on when I come to it, I can spray away happily. And at the end of it, I just have to use tweezers, pull out the tape that's lining the inside of the intakes. So it's starting to look very much like a Harrier now. This is an example of where the ejector pin marks were on the outside, and you think, why? You don't need to. A bit of forethought, and you don't have to worry about that type of stuff. I do think that's where Airfix can tend to fall down. Their instructions are still crap as well. They've not improved them since the 1970s. Here I'm coming back with just some Mr. Surfacer, just tidy up a few of the gaps. And I've probably not mentioned it often, but I do occasionally use primer. Not always. If I can get away without using it, I will. But in this case, because I shouldn't say bogged up a fair bit. Most of it was probably not even noticeable, but I was being fussy. So it gave me a nice base coat, and then especially with the grey going over it, comes up really nice. Otherwise, it can be a bit uneven, especially as you, like where I did there with brushing on some Mr. Surfacer. This is lacquer paint, so to me, it makes life so much easier. But I also get that they're not for everyone. They are pretty, what's the word, noxious, toxic. Interestingly, they are, if you've never used them, they are very tough, very easy to use. But for example, I spilled a drop on my desk and it just melts through. And that's why I don't often use primer. You can see this grey is really coming up nice. Here's one of my little magic tricks. In one of my earlier videos, a few months back, I bought the Tamiya drill. And again, this is one of those annoying Airfix things where they had a seam line right down the middle of the canopy. These things can be scary if you've never done it before, but what I'm doing here is using my drill to buff that out with some polishing compound. If you don't have polishing compound, you can use toothpaste. It'll make your canopy smell nice and minty as well. So this is one of those skills, if you're new, practice doing your cockpits, because not your cockpits, your canopies, because it used to scare me. It used to be something that I was really worried about, like, if I scratch or mess up my canopy, what can I do? So I would suggest, if you've never done it, learn how to do it, practice a bit. This is where I don't always use the airbrush. In this case, it would have meant too much mucking around and masking and so on, just to do that matte black on the internals there. Decals, I got to say, I wasn't really happy with the decals. They didn't seem to stick very well. I actually used Microsol to come back on some of these just to get them to adhere properly. It wasn't a major problem, but sometimes to me it's just frustrating. I've never shown this part of it. This is how I do my decals. No idea. And again, I'm not telling people what to do. I assume you'll figure out your own ways and steal and see how everyone else does it and figure out what you want to do. It just amuses me because when I was a kid, I would just put the whole sheet into a saucer of water on the kitchen table and you end up in a huge mess. So yeah, these all go on nicely. No big dramas. But as I say, the adhesion wasn't great at all. I did find that issue a couple times where touching it and suddenly there's a decal on my fingers. Now, this is one of those things I've figured out why you should buy Eduard kits. They have these really nice sprues on their clear parts. So I've gone into my stash, I think it was a Spitfire Mark 9, and I've basically just cut off part of that ring that Eduard kits come with, their clear sprues. The base, I've no idea where I got it. It's probably from my son's Warhammer or somewhere, whatever I found on the bench. So that's how I make my stands, and that's where it's at. Nice little kit, no great dramas. A few things I wish were better. As I say, if I was going to do more Harriers, I'd go for the Kinetic, but they're twice the price. If you want some fun, get the old Tamiya Harrier. It's probably one of the worst you can find. Just my opinion anyway. So I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you learned a few things. As usual, any questions, comments, thoughts, opinions, let me know. Have a great day wherever you are. Stay safe and always look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again.